Coming up on Clergy Corner, we're going to talk about faith and politics. Does our faith inform us on how to vote? Some might think so. What do you think? Live from LTV Studio A, you are watching Clergy Corner. And welcome to Clergy Corner. I am Dan Martian, pastor at the Presbyterian Church of Livingston and your host. Joining me on the show today, we have Reverend Dr. Kevin Newberg from the Methodist Church here in Livingston. The Reverend Elizabeth Wigg Maxwell from St. Peter's Episcopal Church. Reverend Ronald D. Pasquale from the Full Gospel Church. We have Rabbi Faith Joy Dantowitz from Temple Ben Abraham. And Father Joseph Laracy from St. Philomena Roman Catholic Church. Welcome, my friends, to the show today. We are in the middle of a presidential election, and a few more months from now, we're going to be finding out who's going to be the new president of the United States. And we have debates going on, we have a lot of discussion going on, and it seems that also the religious and their religious beliefs are up for a vote. Is that true? I don't know. We'll be talking about that today. But I was just kind of wondering, is it really important that our elected officials hold a certain belief system? Father Joe, what do you think?
Great question, Dan. Thank you. We believe that, as Roman Catholics, that political questions are really questions about the common good, about justice, about equality, about manifesting the values of a people, of a culture. And therefore, intrinsically, our faith can inform these questions. And one of the beautiful things about our country, about the United States, is that people can bring their faith, bring their deeply held convictions to the public sphere. We know that that's not the case in many places throughout the world. And so, yeah, in short, yes, I believe, and I think I can speak for most Roman Catholics, that faith can and should inform political discussion.
Well, when does it start going on that fine line between separation between church and state? Kevin, what do you think? Is there a fine line that we don't want to overstep our bounds?
In talking about political elections?
Yeah, you know.
I don't know. Well, it would depend on if the person that's running is running on some kind of a religious platform that's trying to in some way infringe upon the religious freedoms that we all hold dear. But otherwise, I don't know that. I think most voters would like to know more about the candidates and their faith and how deeply that faith is held and how consistently it's been held, or whether they have opted for a certain belief system because they think it will be politically advantageous. So in an election type of context, I think they should go ahead and talk about their faith.
So Faith Joy.
I'm not sure if you addressed the first part of Dan's question about, you were asking if somebody has to have a certain religious belief to be elected to political office. Did I hear that in the question?
Yeah, that's part of the question and part of our discussion today, I think.
I think that cannot be part of the litmus test for who is qualified to be elected, whether it's somebody who's of the Roman Catholic faith or who's Lutheran or who's Protestant or atheist, that we can want to know about a candidate's political beliefs and their religious beliefs, but their religious beliefs should not be the only reason that we're going to, maybe it will be the reason somebody wants to vote for them, but that shouldn't be a requirement that they must be this religion or must have these type of beliefs to be qualified to become either the president or any other political office.
When did we start really becoming serious about the religious beliefs? Because when I was growing up, 60s and 70s, that wasn't a big deal. We had Richard Nixon, that was a Quaker. and people didn't really talk about his religious beliefs. And Lyndon Johnson, we didn't really talk about his religious beliefs. And then JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, was the first Roman Catholic president, and he had to answer questions about his religious belief and that the Pope wouldn't be, running the country. Incidentally, he's the first Roman Catholic president. He's been the last Roman Catholic president. So it seems like we still have that litmus test going on, saying, well, you got to be a certain religious person. And I was interested to see what Ben Carson was saying, who is a Seventh-day Adventist. His litmus test was Muslims need not apply for the president. And so already he's set himself up saying that it's not the mainstream. So when did we as a nation become so enthralled in our candidates' religious beliefs?
Back in the early 80s, if many can recall, the term moral majority began to take its, and
Ron, who came up with that term?
Oh, I'm not sure who actually came up, but I believe it was born out of Liberty University in the church there.
Jerry Falwell.
Jerry
Yeah,
Falwell,
Jerry
thank you,
Falwell,
that's the name.
conservative.
And just, in fact, if I remember correctly, Pat Robertson, another from CBN, was actually running for president. So I think there's always been, a desire to understand, the religious part of it, but I think it definitely took its mainstream and media effect, definitely in the 80s, because that's where things started to really just, the press and everybody started to catch on and, see whether it was a problem, whether it was good. So I think really the last 30 years, it's been more of a prominent, more than anything else, in my opinion.
Do you think that's healthy?
I think it's healthy. Well, again, it depends, and I think you alluded to it. It depends if you want to vote on somebody because of their religious belief. If that's your litmus test as an American citizen, then yes, it's important for you to understand. If it's not, then it really doesn't matter. So I guess it depends on the individual and which way they decide they want to vote for the person.
Elizabeth, what do you think?
Well, I think, for instance, with the example you gave about Ben Carson, that to me is, it's just a bigoted position to have. And I think that that grows not out of we're not even talking about faith there. What we're talking about is a stereotype.
Okay.
And in the same way that supposedly our president right now, Barack Obama, is a Muslim too. He's not. He's Christian,
He's not, yeah,
right?
exactly.
But
right.
that's the kind of I think sort of hysteria, kind of stirring, kind of provocative comments that have no basis, and that is a shift, I think, for the worse. Because then we're just speaking in separatist, sort of racist, bigoted kinds of tones. So that it's
and they produce a lot of fear. And it seems like fear, if you tell people enough, the voters, and you elicit fear into them, then they start believing that fear.
Well, and I think that's part of what we've seen with the evolution is that we've got the media where you can go viral, in seconds about various things, and I think then then we get into the whole thing of who's got the soundbite, who's got the power with regard to the media, and then we're appealing to a less responsible way of joining in the public sector or in politics, as you might say. I think, as I was thinking about some of these questions, I was thinking about why are we talking about faith and religion? Maybe we need to be talking about character and values and morals instead of religion, from the standpoint that we tend to label people when we're talking about their religious beliefs often. And
is it easier to go ahead and then talk about the morals, the character, the values that someone has, and wrap that up all in a religious package, Is it easier to do it that way? For instance, if a person's a Methodist, this is their values, this is the character, or a person's a Presbyterian, their person is like in this way. Well, just to let you know, Donald Trump is not the epitome of a Presbyterian, even though he says he's a Presbyterian. He's not a good example of what a Presbyterian is. I just want to make sure, I would love to go ahead and talk to Donald Trump about some of his, his religious background and his beliefs in the Presbyterian Church. I needed to say that just to get that onto the airwaves because no one else is doing it. You've heard it first here at LTV. But is it easier to do that and then say, okay, fine, I identify with that person because they hold the same morals and values that I have?
I think people are always, and I go back to my original statement, I think people will always look towards that end of it. I think it's going to play a very pivotal part. And again, we're talking about just general Americans who are, every day just doing things and looking. And I think if they are, a very in-depth in their faith tradition, they're going to resonate with that. It's going to mean something. Now, I don't know how far it would be to say, a Methodist will only vote for a Methodist, a Presbyterian will only vote for a Presbyterian. I think that's a little bit too narrow and what it would be, but I believe the same values from their belief system, I think that would play a huge part in who they would look at. I really do.
Well, in this election, we have Ben Sanders, Ben Carson, and then we have Sanders. Bernie Sanders, right, sorry. And sorry, Bernie, if you're watching. And
Sure
and then we have who's Jewish, and then we have other smatterings in there of Seventh-day Adventists, which we've never had run before as president. Methodist, Presbyterian, Episcopalian have run, Roman Catholic, and so we have this whole smattering. What group would be the hardest for them to run here in the United States? Would it be the Muslims? Atheistic group, someone that has no faith whatsoever, maybe even a gay president? Would they have a difficult time?
Yes.
Yes,
to all the above.
Right, to all the above, yeah.
They would all have a tough time.
Why do you think that would be?
We associate faith with ethics or morals, or we associate faith with what makes America great, which is an interesting concept. But we do. And we also have a lot of...
Wait, I don't understand. So then why does that make it challenging if we associate faith with what makes
Well,
America
because
great?
we narrow that faith. It's within certain parameters, and that faith is usually attached to very specific issues. Issues such as abortion, for instance. And so, as Ron was saying, we associate that if people hold a certain faith, if they're a part of a certain faith orientation, a denomination, if you will, then they're going to have a certain stand on the issues that I'm concerned about. And so I don't know that it's so much the faith of the person, it's the way they believe that faith will translate to the hot button issues that are key to them. At least that's what's being pushed in one segment of the country.
True.
Faith choice.
No, I just feel like we're getting adding too many layers, or getting distracted by the core issues. I mean, we can say there's this person is this religion, this person is this religion, but first, if we're looking at people as politicians, let's hear what their political platforms are. That's part of it. I mean, do I need to know that they're a passionate downhill skier? Is that going to make me want to vote for them? Do I need to know that they're gluten-free? Oh, I like to eat bread, so I can't vote for them because they're gluten-free. So I don't want to make light of it, but just I think we're getting almost too hung up on it. I want to know, when Elizabeth mentioned before about the morals, I think that's where the connection between faith and politics really is. As religious leaders and people of faith, we don't come out at our congregations to say you must vote for a certain political candidate. We would lose our nonprofit status. We can speak out as religious leaders with our moral values and standing up with moral courage, and that's important to do. And so we can look to the candidates to see what their issues are, what they're passionate about. It's interesting, yesterday I heard an interview with New Jersey's former governor, Christine Todd Whitman, and who was governor of New Jersey for a number of years and then was at the EPA for a couple of years. And she was reflecting, I guess she's really not part of the main Republican Party now, because she was saying, I don't understand why the Republicans aren't embracing the environment. You know, we were the first ones to start the environment, policies for the environment, start the EPA, and then the interviewer asked her, you know, and what about other matters? And she said, well, I'm pro-life. Actually, no, I mean, I'm pro-life for everybody, meaning I'm pro-choice, and that wouldn't be accepted in the Republican tent, so to speak. So it's interesting, like she still identifies in connection to it, but her viewpoints put her outside the main camp there. It's gotten more conservative. So it's just, I think we have to look at the positions that people want to put forward and their issues. And of course, there are people who are they're going to vote on one issue. Like some Jews will say Israel is the main issue for me. I'm going to vote on that. There are a lot of people who are really concerned about gun violence in our country, and they're going to look at, do you have a strong rating from the NRA or a terrible rating from the NRA? Great, a terrible rating, then I'll vote for you. Or I'm a Second Amendment, or I'm a Second Amendment person, so I'm going to want the strong, whatever it is that they'll choose, the environment. So they're going to look at all these issues and then kind of figure out who is the candidate that has enough of what they're looking for to be the strongest candidate.
Well, and we have to remember too that there's a huge group of people that are outside of religious bodies as well. I mean, we may look at somebody. There may be some people who look at someone and say, oh, he's whatever or she's whatever, Roman Catholic, evangelical, Jewish, but there are a lot of people who are not identifying with any religious faith or institution in this country anymore. I mean, it's a huge group now, as we all well know. People aren't going to church or temple as much as they used to. So we have to remember that there's that group of people too. And I don't know that those people are thinking about the faith stance as much as they are thinking about some of these other issues. So, there's got to be an appeal to that kind of thing too.
So it's pretty much what they align themselves with, a candidate that is closely to their own, their own style, their own morals, their own values. Even if they don't go to church or temple, they still have a moralistic compass. And they look at maybe at the candidate saying who's the closest to their moralistic compass, and that would allow them to maybe do some growth.
Well, I don't know that they are thinking about those kinds of things. I think part of what we need to be doing is encouraging more of that as opposed to, hey, I'm an Episcopalian candidate and so you should be voting for me. I think there needs to be more discussion in our culture about, I love what David Brooks has been doing about character and what it means. David Brooks, who writes for the New York Times.
Right.
What does it mean to have character? What builds character? What is character? I mean, we use those words sometimes, you rattle them off, character, morals, values. I don't think we know anymore what those really are and what we're really referring to. I don't know that we could agree on that. And I think we need to have much more conversation about that and less about the issues as we see them and what our particular faith, our particular denomination or faith should be.
Because in the grand scheme of things, that might be important for sound bites. It might be important for a group of people, but not for the masses. And the president, our elected officials, they really need to think about the holistic of the community or the nation, rather than their own, certain arena or hidden agendas. Faith, Joy.
No, and just adding to what you're saying about the moral character, I think as people pay attention, it's hard to pay attention. The presidential campaign cycle is pretty long. A lot of debates and elections aren't for another year, it's a little less than a year away.
Yeah.
But to pay attention to who these candidates are and their stories, and are their stories true? We were talking before we went on air about fact checking, what people say, what they say about issues in the debates, and what they say about their own lives. Like, is it true, is it not true? To understand, is this a person of character, moral character, who I can trust to become the leader of this country? So that's really important as well.
Yeah. We've really lost, I think, a piece of that public discourse. In our country, we're into sound bites. We're into saying the most inflammatory thing we can. We're into getting our moment of fame, or we're into instilling fear in people. I think that's one of the huge motivations these days.
That's a great point, and it makes me think about a previous segment of this show in which we talked about civility and how there's been a lack of civility in the public sphere. And that's so detrimental to our culture. When we see politicians treating each other in an uncharitable way, that leads normal people to act likewise. And because for better or worse, people hold political leaders up on a pedestal. And if they don't exhibit the values and the morals, such as a simple one like civility, then that has a chain reaction in culture, I think.
Good point.
Absolutely, I think we see it in culture all the time. You know, when you
Really
go to services for Christmas or for the Jewish high holidays, and you're praying in your church or your synagogue, and then you go out in the parking lot and you start screaming at each other because you want to get out of the parking lot quickly. So, you know, or in the supermarket when you're like trying to get out of the supermarket, whatever it is. That it's definitely, you know, we're busy people, we're stressed out people, we're feeling pressured by the economy. So I think people sometimes forget to just be kind some of the time. So it's an important reminder, absolutely.
But you know, the idea of looking at how a candidate conducts themselves is it's huge, and I don't know that I agree with you. I don't think that we put enough emphasis on that anymore. Is this person, you know, is this person genuinely telling me something that they feel strongly? Are they conducting themselves in a respectable way? Are they respectful toward other people? Have they taken the time to check whether what they're saying is actually true? You know, all those, that's all become a huge part of our discourse,
I'm a Northeast boy, so I'm not sure how, like, this type of discussion, maybe you can tell me, because not that I'm asking the questions, of course, Dan, but the
Ron, that's okay, you know, go with the spirits flowing.
The Bible Belt area, would this type of discussion be a little bit different based on where we are in the different states? Would this play different in the South as far as, no, it's important that your faith is there? Would it play different in a Northwest area? I don't know how much that would be in, because
we're
I know
not
from
talking
Northeast.
about faith not being there. We're talking about how do I demonstrate or live into my faith besides saying some of the kind of stuff that might appeal to, you know, be simplified. So we're talking about, we're not talking about not, if you don't talk about it, it doesn't mean you don't have faith.
Right.
We're talking about seeing it in some other ways.
Okay.
But I'm sort of wondering if the wording itself is important, because they might say, I read the Bible, you know, and then this is my favorite verse in the Bible. It resonates with the South. And they'll say, yes, that person's a Bible-believing person, I'm going to vote for them, you know. Or if you say a Baptist, you know, down south, there's a lot of Baptists. There's a Baptist church on every corner. And so they're going to vote for, you know, someone that is more Baptist. So I'm kind of wondering if, even if culturally, if that's important. We here in the Northeast tend to be, I think, a little bit more progressive and more open. And we what is the issues? What is the character? What is the moral? Those are the important things I think we hold near to us. But other parts of the country, it might be something else.
It could be.
You sometimes get the impression that the positions that they hold are the positions they feel they need to win the primary. And then if they win the primary and they're one of the candidates, then they're making their choices because of swing states. And so they just want to make sure that they win Ohio as a swing state. So what is it that plays well in Ohio? That's the person that I am. And if that means I have a favorite Bible verse that comes from the Gospel of John, then that's what I have.
And you're going to say that.
Because I've got to get Ohio.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to go into the studio audience right now because I know that we do have some questions, and see if the questions resonate with our panel, and see how that can be done. So as I walk into the studio audience, is there someone who would like to ask a question of our fine area clergy here? Don't they look nice? You know, it's a different type of view that I have here. You guys have a great view of our clergy. And they're all smiling and they're all happy. And I guess we're switching all the camera work around so they can see our audience that we have here. What is your name, sir?
Joel Leitner.
And Joel, what is your question?
Is there a clash between faith and politics?
Is a clash between faith and politics. Is there a certain panelist that you would like to direct that to?
Whoever would like to answer.
Okay, Father Joe, this is your person here, Joel Leitner, and would you like to tackle that question to begin with?
Sure. Yeah. I would say there certainly doesn't need to be a clash. People can take views that are outside of the mainstream that place themselves in conflict with others, but for me, in my own life, I feel that my faith informs my political views, and it's something that is enriching and something that provides a compass. I look to the teachings of the popes as a very helpful guide. Very recently, our Holy Father, Pope Francis, wrote Laudato Si', the encyclical on the environment, reminding the world about our responsibility particularly as Christians, to be stewards of creation, to be good stewards, to care for the world God has given us. We could look to John Paul II, Evangelium Vitae, in which the Holy Father reminded us about the dignity of the human person and our responsibility to uphold that. So these are just two examples of where faith is informing our political views, and I don't see any conflict there.
Elizabeth.
I think it's not a bad thing for faith and politics to clash. Speaking from my own tradition, Jesus certainly clashed with the political leaders of his time. And it seems to me that that was a main part of his ministry, was speaking truth to power. So clashing with the political power, the religious power, in order to advocate for the poor, the outcast, the marginalized. So he certainly did that.
Right. Which brings me up to another question, is when does faith and politics work together? Because, like you were saying, is right across the board, we in the religious community, we do stand up for the marginalized. We are the voice for the voiceless. And sometimes we need to be the conscience of our politics, of the government. And I can see that clash going on. So when does it become, when do we work together? And where have we worked together?
Well, Faith Joy has done all of this wonderful work with the with gun violence, and so she can speak to that a little bit.
Okay. Well, the Religious Community Metro Industrial Areas Foundation is an organizing group. President Obama used to be part of it when he was in Chicago, and it's one response to the issue of gun violence. It's such a massive problem. We can't solve all gun violence immediately, but it's one way to address the issue. And this is actually focusing on the executive power of and holding the gun manufacturers accountable. We ask for safety in our cars, safety in our appliances. We should ask for safety in our guns. And this is looking at making smart guns available in our marketplace. New Jersey actually has been a challenge to this because we have a wonderful law that's been on the books since 2002 for smart guns, but the mandate required that within 3 years of a smart gun being sold anywhere in our nation, within 3 years, all guns in New Jersey have to be smart guns. And that has, because people have protested that law and reacted in crazy ways to a potential sale in Maryland and a potential sale in California this past year of a smart gun by Armitex, it became clear that the market can't emerge when there are people who are trying to even not allow any guns to be sold. So now Senator Loretta Weinberg in Trenton has crafted new legislation to make it possible. And she's been supported by faith leaders who are saying we need to stand up for our brothers or sisters, our congregants, our friends, our strangers, everybody in our community who's getting killed for senseless reasons, like the person whose child picks up the gun and shoots them and kills them by accident. So it's one way that people of faith and religion can work together.
Right, so the people of faith in the religious community are partnering up with people that are, they have moral character.
That's faith and politics, but it's not, it's faith leaders coming together with moral courage to encourage there to be some type of change to help make our lives better. I mean, that's what politics is supposed to take care of your lives, right?
Yeah, think of the common good and what is best for the common good. Do we have another question in the audience?
Yes, I have one.
Okay, and what is your name?
Mary McCarthy.
Mary, what is your question?
Why is it so difficult to discuss politics?
Why is it so difficult to discuss politics? Who would you like to answer, Mary? Anybody on the panel?
Yes, anybody.
Okay. Ron, would you like to tackle that?
Yeah, I think it's tough to discuss it because when you get 10 people in a room, there could be 10 different views of one subject, and they can discuss and discuss. It's, and then you polarize it to say, I'm Democratic, I'm Republican, and the difficulty is because of the coming together. The discussions are good, but if you never go anywhere with it, it leads to one common goal, then we've got a problem. So it's difficult to discuss because of the diversity of the issues of today, in my opinion, that follow through. So I think it's just something we need to work on.
Yeah, I think we don't have enough practice. I think that's part of it.
Well, maybe what we should do is help our people, nurture our people to practice on how to talk about it in a very civil way. Well, friends, thank you so much for being on the show today, and thank you for the studio audience, and thank you for joining us at home. Until we meet again, may God's love